The millionaire didn't think twice. He bought the entire restaurant just to have one night with her, a young waitress with innocent eyes who had never given herself to any man. If this story caught your attention, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. The smell of sea air mixed with the old oil from the fryers had become like a second skin to Emily. 23 years carrying trays, 23 years smiling at faces that barely saw her, 23 years pretending that this life was enough. The High Tide restaurant sat at the end of the pier, in a forgotten piece of San Diego, where cargo ships cast their shadows over the lost dreams of the city. She tied her apron around her waist with mechanical movements, her fingers already knowing every knot, every fold of the faded fabric. In the foggy mirror of the employee bathroom, her reflection showed a face she still couldn't fully accept as her own. Dark eyes that seemed to hold secrets, even from herself. Brown hair pulled back in a messy bun that never stayed perfect, and skin that had never been touched by a man's hands with romantic intent. Virginity at 23 wasn't a choice. It was circumstance. It was fear. It was protection. It was everything her mother had taught her since she was little. Men take, they never give. Men demand, they never offer. Men destroy, they never build. And Emily believed this with the fervor of someone who grew up seeing daily proof of the theory. Her mother, Connie, had been hospitalized for 3 months in the city's public hospital. A disease that doctors couldn't name had stolen her movements, leaving her trapped in a bed, speaking in fragments and recognizing her daughter only in lucid moments that became increasingly rare. Bills piled up in a frightening stack on the little table in the living room, and Emily's salary barely covered the medications, let alone the specialized treatments she so desperately needed. Around her neck, Emily carried her only inheritance, an antique golden key hanging on a thin chain that her father had left before disappearing forever. She was only 7 when he left for work one ordinary morning and never returned. Her mother never properly explained what happened, only saying that some men weren't made to stay. But the key remained, along with a yellowed note that said, 1. Tay, you'll know what it opens, when the time is right. The restaurant was beginning to fill with the evening clientele. Dock workers finishing their shifts, merchants closing their shops, some lost tourists who ventured too far from the historic downtown. Emily knew each type of customer, each likely order, each expected tip. But that night, there was something different in the air, a tension she couldn't name. That's when he walked in. Nathan Blackwood didn't need an introduction. His name was plastered on billboards throughout the city, on skyscrapers that sliced through the Los Angeles skyline. In business magazines she sometimes leafed through in the doctor's office while waiting for news about her mother. But seeing him in person was something completely different. It was as if all the energy in the room concentrated on him, as if the air became denser, more charged. He wore a suit that probably cost more than her annual salary, but it wasn't the clothes that caught attention. It was how he occupied space, as if the whole world was too small to contain him. Tall, with dark hair slightly graying at the temples, defined jawline and eyes that seemed to see through people. There was a thin scar running from his ear to almost the corner of his mouth, the mark of a past she sensed had been violent. Nathan chose the back table, the most secluded one, the one that was half hidden behind a peeling decorative column. Emily approached with her order pad in hand, trying to maintain the professional composure that always protected her from uncomfortable situations. "Good evening. What would you like?" she asked without raising her eyes from the pad. "Whiskey." Black label, neat. His voice was deep, controlled, but there was something underneath, an intensity that finally made her look directly at him. It was a mistake. Nathan's eyes analyzed her with surgical precision, as if cataloging every detail, every reaction, every breath. It wasn't the vulgar gaze of other men, full of cheap insinuations. It was something much more dangerous. It was genuine interest, curiosity, and a kind of hunger she couldn't comprehend. "We don't have black label whiskey," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "We have red label or a domestic brand." "Then you choose." He leaned back in his chair, a half smile playing on his lips. "I'm sure you know what's best for me." The phrase carried a double meaning that made her stomach contract. Emily quickly noted the order and walked away, feeling his eyes glued to her back. At the bar, while the owner of the establishment, Joe, prepared the drink, she tried to regain control. "Who is that guy?" she asked quietly. Joe looked in the direction of the table and visibly paled. "Nathan Blackwood. Owns half the buildings. In Los Angeles, what's he doing here?" "Drinking whiskey," she replied, but the question intrigued her, too. When she returned with the drink, Nathan was waiting with an envelope on the table, thick, elegant, with her name written in firm handwriting. "How do you know my name?" The question came out before she could control herself. "Emily Baker, 23 years old, worked here for 4 years, mother hospitalized at Memorial Hospital, lives alone in a 1-bedroom apartment on Palm Street." Each piece of information fell like a stone in the still water of her life. "It's not difficult to know these things when you have interest." Her blood froze. "What do you want?" "Open the envelope." Inside was more money than she had seen in her entire life. New bills, organized, enough to pay for all her mother's treatments and still have enough left to start life over anywhere. But there was also a card with an address and a time. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock. "A dinner," he said, as if making the most natural invitation in the world. "Just the two of us." "I can't accept this." She pushed the envelope back to him, but Nathan made no move to take it. "You can, and you will." It wasn't a request, it was a statement. "Because your mother needs a treatment that costs exactly what's in that envelope. And tomorrow night, you'll discover that sometimes accepting help is the most courageous thing someone can do." He stood up, left some bills on the table to pay for the drink he'd barely touched, and walked out of the restaurant without looking. "Pack." Emily stood there holding the envelope, feeling that her life had just taken an irreversible turn. Emily spent the entire night awake, the envelope on the small living room table, like a bomb about to explode. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Nathan's face, that calculated smile. Those eyes that seemed to see straight through her soul. How had he gotten her personal information? Why her, among all the women who surely gravitated around a man like him? At 6 in the morning, she gave up trying to sleep. She made weak coffee, because money was counted until the end of the month, and called the hospital. The night nurse said Connie had had an agitated night, talking to herself, calling for someone, named Michael. Emily had never heard that name before, but lately her mother had been saying many things that didn't make sense. On the bus that took her to the hospital, she observed the city waking up. San Diego had this peculiar smell of salt and concrete, of dreams that arrived by sea and got lost in the grey streets. She thought about how different it would be if she had been born in another family, in another place, with other opportunities. But this kind of thinking was a luxury she couldn't afford. Connie was awake when she arrived, but her eyes had that distant gleam that indicated she wasn't really present. Emily held her hand, trying to transmit all the love she felt, all the strength she needed to share. "Mom, it's Emily. I'm here." "Emily." The voice came out scratchy, difficult. "The key. Do you still have the key?" "I do, Mom. I always do." He said that when the time came, you would understand. Connie squeezed her hand with surprising strength. "Be careful with rich men, honey. They never want only what they say they want." The words echoed in Emily's mind, all the way back home, as if her mother knew, as if she could sense the danger approaching. But at the same time, the bills continued to pile up. The doctors continued to request tests she couldn't afford, and time was running out. The address on the card led to one of the most upscale neighborhoods in San Diego, a mansion that looked more like a small palace. Emily arrived punctually at 9, wearing the only decent dress she owned, a simple black one she'd bought on sale 2 years ago. She felt ridiculously out of place as she rang the doorbell. A man in a suit opened the door. It wasn't Nathan, but someone who clearly worked for him, tall with muscles visible even under his formal clothes, alert eyes that quickly analyzed her before stepping aside to let her in. "Miss Baker, Mr. Blackwood is waiting for you on the terrace." The house was a museum of good taste and money. Paintings she suspected were originals, furniture that seemed to have been imported from other centuries, a decoration that breathed sophistication. Her steps echoed on the marble as she followed the man through corridors that seemed endless. The terrace overlooked the ocean, and the table was set for two with an elegance that intimidated her. Candles, flowers, crystal that reflected the moonlight. Nathan was standing by the balustrade looking at the sea, wearing a white shirt that the night breeze made ripple slightly. When he heard her arrive, he turned. "You came." There was no surprise in his voice, only satisfaction. "I didn't have a choice." "We always have choices, Emily. Sometimes we just don't like the available options." He led her to the table, pulled out the chair for her to sit. The gesture, although courteous, had something possessive about it, as if he were marking territory. Dinner was served by silent staff, dishes she didn't even know how to pronounce, wines that cost more than her monthly salary. "Why me?" The question came out in the middle of the second course, when the silence began to become unbearable. Nathan studied her for a long moment before answering. "You're different from the women I know." "Different how?" "They want something from me, money, status, protection. You're afraid of me, but not in the way I expected." "And how did you expect?" "I expected you to throw yourself at my feet, to act like all the others, pretending resistance but secretly calculating how much you could gain." He leaned back in his chair, the wine making his eyes shine more intensely. "But you truly don't want to be here, and that fascinates me. That's sick." "It is," he agreed without hesitation. "I am a sick man, Emily. I was shaped by circumstances you can't even imagine. I learned that everything in this world has a price, that everyone has a weakness, that love is the greatest lie. But you make me question those certainties." The wind brought the smell of the sea, mixed with his cologne. Something expensive, masculine, that stirred senses she didn't know she possessed. There was something hypnotic in the way he spoke, in the intensity of his gaze, in the way he seemed genuinely interested in each of her reactions. "Tell me about your mother," he said suddenly. "Why?" "Because I want to understand you, and it's impossible to understand someone without knowing where they came from." Emily was surprised to find herself talking about Connie's illness, about how hard it was to see her wasting away, about the constant fear of losing her. Nathan listened in silence, and there was something in his eyes she couldn't decipher, perhaps recognition, perhaps pain. "And your father?" he asked when she finished. "Disappeared when I was a child, left only." She instinctively touched the key on her neck. Nathan's eyes fixed on the object, and for a moment something passed across his face, surprise, recognition, something that quickly transformed into a neutral expression. "May I see?" She hesitated but ended up taking off the chain and handing it to him. Nathan examined the key carefully, turning it in the candlelight. His hands trembled almost imperceptibly. "It's beautiful," he finally said, giving it back. "Antique. Must have some sentimental value." "It's all I have of him." The rest of the dinner passed in contemplative silence. When they finished, Nathan stood up and went to the balustrade again. Emily followed him, keeping her distance. "Your mother will receive the best treatment available," he said without looking at her. "The specialist doctors, the tests, the medications, all paid for." "In exchange for what?" Finally he turned. "For you to trust me." "Just that?" "For now." He approached, and she could feel the heat of his body, the smell of his skin. "I could have demanded anything, Emily. I could have forced. But I want you to come of your own. Free will. And if I don't want to come, then your mother dies." The phrase was said with a brutal simplicity that cut like a blade. "And you'll live the rest of your life knowing you could have saved her." Emily felt tears burning in her eyes, but didn't let them fall. "You're a monster." "I am." He touched her face gently, his thumb tracing a line from her temple to her chin. "But I'm a monster who can save the only person you love." His touch burned her skin in a way that frightened her. It wasn't just physical contact. It was as if he had accessed something deep inside her, something she didn't even know existed. 3 days later, Emily was sitting in the waiting room of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, the best private hospital in the country, a place she never imagined she could set foot in. Connie had been transferred the night before in an ICU ambulance, accompanied by a medical team that Nathan had personally hired. The change was radical. Private room with a view of the garden, state-of-the-art equipment, specialized nurses. Emily observed everything with a mixture of gratitude and terror because she knew that every minute of that treatment ensnared her more deeply in the web that Nathan had woven around her. Dr. Henry Marshall, the neurologist in charge of the case, was a man in his 60s, white hair, international reputation. He examined all of Connie's previous tests and ordered a battery of new ones. "It's a complex case," he explained during the consultation, "but there are signs that it's not degenerative as we thought. It could be heavy metal poisoning, something that has been accumulating in the body for years. If we're right, it's treatable." Emily felt the world spin. Treatable. The word echoed in her mind like a miracle, but at the same time, a dark doubt began to form. How did Nathan know exactly which specialist to look for? How did he get a spot so quickly in a hospital where waiting lists lasted months? Leaving the hospital, she found Nathan's driver waiting for her. She didn't have the courage to ask how he knew where she would be. At this point, it seemed Nathan knew everything about her life, while she knew practically nothing about him. "Mr. Blackwood would like to see you," said the driver, a different man from the one at the mansion, but with the same military posture, the same alert eyes. "Now?" "He's in the office. Said it was important." The Blackwood Holdings building dominated one of the main avenues of Los Angeles, 40 floors of glass and steel that cut through the sky like a blade. Emily felt tiny crossing the lobby, her simple shoes echoing on the marble, while executives in expensive suits passed by without even noticing her presence. Nathan's office occupied the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and she could see all the way to San Diego on the horizon, small and distant like an abandoned dream. Nathan was on the phone when she entered, speaking in English to someone who was clearly being fired, judging by the cold and definitive tone of the conversation. When he hung up, he turned to her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "How is your mother?" "Better. Much better." She hesitated before continuing. "How did you know which doctor to look for?" "I have my resources." He approached, and she noticed he was tired, lines of tension around his eyes that weren't there the night of the dinner. "But that's not why I asked you to come here." Nathan led her to a conference table where documents were spread out, contracts, reports, photographs. Emily recognized some of the photos. They were of the High Tide restaurant, but also of other establishments in the port area. "Someone is buying properties on the pier," he explained, systematically, silently, offering above-market values to those who agree to sell quickly, making life impossible for those who resist. "And what does that have to do with me?" "The restaurant where you work is next on the list." He showed an aerial photo where High Tide was circled in red. "Joe received an offer yesterday, 3 times the value of the property, but with a condition. Fire all employees immediately." Emily's stomach contracted. "Will he accept?" "Probably. It's a lot of money for a man who's been trying to pay off debts for months." Nathan gathered the photos, his expression grim. "But I discovered something interesting investigating who's behind this operation." He showed a document with names. She didn't recognize companies with headquarters in tax havens, a complex network of partnerships that led nowhere. Except for one detail, one of the companies had the name Michael Baker as a minority partner. "Baker is a common surname," she said, but her voice came out shaky. "Michael Baker, born in San Diego, disappeared 16 years ago after getting involved with a money laundering operation at the port." Nathan was watching her carefully. Left behind a wife and a 7-year-old daughter. Emily's world collapsed. No, it wasn't possible. Her father couldn't be alive, couldn't be involved in something like this. He had disappeared, had died, had been a victim, not a criminal. "You're lying." "I wish I were." Nathan came closer, but she backed away. "Emily, Your mother said the name Michael in the hospital. The heavy metal poisoning she has, it's consistent with prolonged exposure to substances used in drug refining. And that key you carry, no. She put her hand on her neck, protecting the key. Don't you dare talk about it. It's a key to a safe, isn't it? A safe that's somewhere you frequent regularly, but never noticed. Somewhere that was part of your father's life. Emily's legs failed and she leaned on the table. The restaurant. Of course it was the restaurant. Michael Baker had worked on the docks his entire life, knew all the establishments in the area. High tide had existed for decades since before she was born. Why are you telling me this? She whispered. Because you're in danger. Nathan's voice was urgent now, all the previous coldness replaced by something that seemed like genuine concern. Whoever is buying these properties doesn't just want the land. They want what's hidden in them. And if they discover that you have the key— He didn't need to finish. Emily understood. Blackie. She also understood why her mother always had been afraid, why she always changed the subject when she asked about her father, why she insisted that she keep the key hidden. What do you want from me? She asked. But this time, the question had a different weight. I want to protect you. Nathan touched her face again, and this time she didn't back away. I want you to trust me. I want you to let me take care of you. And in her return, you. The answer was simple, direct, devastating. Not just one night, not just your body, all of you. Your trust, your loyalty, your companionship. There was something vulnerable in the way he said the last word, as if companionship was something he had never really experienced. Emily studied him, noticing for the first time small details, the scar on his left hand, the way he unconsciously checked the exits of the environment, the constant tension in the shoulders of someone who never really relaxes. Who hurt you? The question came out before she could control herself. Nathan's eyes hardened for a moment, then softened with a deep sadness. Everyone who should have loved me. At that moment, something changed between them. It was no longer just predator and prey, no longer just blackmail and desperation. It was recognition. Two orphans in different worlds, but marked by the same fundamental loneliness. If I accept, she said slowly, if I stay with you, will you help me discover the truth about my father? I'll do more than that. Nathan took her hands, and this time the touch was gentle, almost reverent. I'll make whoever is after you pay for every moment of fear they caused. It was a promise of violence, spoken with the tenderness of a declaration of love. And the scariest thing was that Emily believed him, believed and felt a dangerous gratitude warming her chest. Outside, Los Angeles stretched endlessly, millions of lives intertwined in complexities she was only beginning to understand. And at the center of it all, she had just voluntarily placed herself in the orbit of the most dangerous man she had ever met. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel completely alone. Emily woke up in silk, Italian silk sheets, pillows, as soft as clouds, a bed that was bigger than her entire apartment. For a moment she forgot where she was, until reality returned like a cold wave. She was in Nathan's mansion, in the room he had prepared for her, living a life that wasn't hers. 3 weeks had passed since she accepted his protection. 3 weeks sleeping in that house, eating at crystal tables, wearing clothes that cost more than years of her salary. Nathan had insisted that she needed to look like someone who belonged in his world if she wanted to stay safe. The wardrobe he had made for her was a dream and a nightmare at the same time, each piece perfect, each fabric luxurious, each color chosen to enhance her beauty in ways she didn't even know existed. But the most disconcerting thing wasn't the clothes or the house. It was how Nathan treated her. Respectful, attentive, but with an intensity that kept her constantly alert. He never tried to force physical intimacy, never invaded her room, never even suggested that she should reciprocate in any specific way. He just watched, studied her every move, every expression, as if he were memorizing something precious. That morning, she found him in the private gym of the house, shirtless, hitting a punching bag with a controlled violence that made her stop at the door. His body was a work of art sculpted in scars, some thin, surgical, others irregular, brutal. She counted at least 12 different marks before he noticed her presence. "Can't sleep?" he asked, without stopping hitting the bag. "It's 7 in the morning. For me, it's still night." Nathan finally stopped, grabbing a towel to dry the sweat. "I haven't slept well since I was 14. "What happened when you were 14? He studied her for a long moment, as if assessing how much of the truth he could share. "My mother sold me to pay off a drug debt. The man who bought me liked children who looked like me." The brutal simplicity of the revelation took the air from her lungs. Emily always knew that Nathan carried traumas, but hearing that said with such coldness as if it were just a historical fact was devastating. "How did you escape?" "I killed him." Again, the same terrible simplicity. "At 16, it was my first death, but not the last." Emily should have run. She should have been horrified, terrified. Instead, she felt a wave of anger on his behalf for the boy he had been, for the child no one protected. "And your mother?" "Overdose 2 years later. The money she received for selling me lasted only a few months." Nathan approached, stopping at a respectful distance. "You should be afraid of me, Emily." "I know." She touched one of the scars on his chest, a cut that crossed his ribs. "But I'm not." Her touch was like electricity. Nathan closed his eyes, his breathing becoming irregular. It was the first time she had touched him voluntarily, without provocation, without fear. It was the first time anyone had touched his scars with something that resembled affection. "We need to go to the restaurant today," he said, backing away before he lost control. "Joe closed the deal yesterday. We have until tomorrow before the new owners take over." High Tide was empty when they arrived, except for Joe, who was arranging the last things in a box. The man was visibly nervous when he saw Nathan, but greeted Emily with the usual affection. "Girl, you disappeared. I heard your mother is better, thank God." "She is, Joe. And you, what will you do now?" "I'm going back to Texas, stay with my children. This money will let me retire properly." He looked around with melancholy. "Too bad the place will become a warehouse. The new owners don't want a restaurant here." Emily felt her stomach tighten. "Warehouse for what?" Nathan touched her arm lightly, a gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed by her former boss. "Joe, do you mind if I take one last look around, for nostalgia?" "Of course, girl. Feel free. I'll finish packing my things in the office." Wendy. They were alone. Nathan examined the environment with professional eyes. "Where do you think it would be?" "How safe needs to be in a structurally solid place, protected from the sea moisture." Emily closed her eyes, trying to remember old conversations, her father talking about work. A memory surfaced, him mentioning something about the miracle basement, where they kept the expensive drinks. She was 7 and thought it was a funny name. "Below," she said, there's a basement." The entrance was hidden behind a shelf in the kitchen. Wooden steps descended to a damp space that smelled of sea and time. Nathan used his cell phone flashlight to illuminate the way, revealing shelves with dust-covered bottles, and at the back, a brick wall that looked different from the rest. Emily took the key from her neck with trembling hands. On the wall, half hidden, behind a beam, was an old safe embedded in the masonry. The key fit perfectly. Inside, they found documents, photographs, and 3 flash drives. The photos showed her father with men she didn't recognize, in places that seemed to be ships or warehouses. The documents were contracts, receipts, a meticulous accounting of operations that were clearly not legal. But it was one of the flash drives that revealed the complete truth. Nathan connected it to a laptop he always carried, and they watched security recordings, audio of conversations, evidence of a money laundering operation that involved billions of dollars over years. Michael Baker wasn't just a minor participant. He was the man who controlled all the port logistics of the operation, the brain behind the system that allowed ships to load and unload goods without going through customs controls. And he had recorded everything, documented every crime, every name involved. "He was building a life insurance policy," murmured Nathan, analyzing the files. "If something went wrong, he would have a way to protect himself." but he disappeared anyway. No. Nathan showed a document dated just 2 years. Goes, he didn't disappear, Emily. He faked his own death. He's alive, hidden somewhere, probably waiting for the dust to settle to come back and recover these files. The revelation was like a punch to the stomach. Her father was alive, and had purposefully abandoned her and her mother, leaving them to struggle alone while he hid with stolen money. Your mother's symptoms, continued Nathan, his voice growing deeper. They're not from accidental exposure to heavy metals. Someone is poisoning her slowly, probably to force her to tell where these evidences are. Emily felt the world spin. Her mother was being poisoned. Someone was killing the woman she loved, most in the world to get information she didn't even know she possessed. Who? The word came out as a hoarse whisper. The same ones who are buying the properties on the pier. The same ones who discovered that Michael Baker left evidence behind. The same ones who now know that you exist and may have access to it. Nathan closed the laptop and put all the documents in a folder. We need to get out of here, now. But when they reached the upper floor, they were no longer alone. 3 men waited in the bar area, and Emily recognized one of them. He was one of the regular customers of the restaurant, someone who always requested the same table, always observed too much. Mr. Blackwood, said the man with an accent. She couldn't identify. What a coincidence to find you here. Nathan instinctively positioned himself in front of Emily, and she could feel the tension radiating from his body like heat. Petrov, I thought you were in Miami. Change of plans. The man smiled, but it was the kind of smile that promised violence. We learned that Miss Baker made some interesting discoveries. We would like to talk to her about the matter. That's not going to happen. Oh, yes, it is. Petrov made an almost imperceptible gesture, and Emily heard footsteps on the upper floor. They weren't alone. You see, Nathan, you've always been intelligent in business, but this time you've gotten into something that's bigger than you, bigger than all of us. Nathan's hand moved discreetly to his waist, where Emily knew he carried a gun. The tension in the air was so dense she could barely breathe. And it was at that moment that she fully understood what kind of world she had entered. It wasn't just about money or power. It was about survival. And the war had only just begun. The silence that followed was cut by the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs. 3 more men armed, strategically positioning themselves to block all exits. Emily felt panic rising in her throat, but Nathan's presence beside her kept her minimally controlled. 6 against 1, said Petrov, as if commenting on the weather. I don't like those odds, even for you, Nathan. You were always terrible at math, Petrov. Nathan's voice came out calm, almost bored. It's 6 against 2, and you forgot to count my men who are positioned outside. Emily looked at him in surprise. What men? Nathan hadn't brought anyone, but then she realized it was a bluff so convincing that she saw Petrov hesitate for a fraction of a second. Even if that's true, Petrov regained his composure, we already have what we want. Michael Baker's files have been secure with us for weeks. What you found down there are just backup copies. Lie. The words came out of Emily's mouth before she could control herself. Petrov smiled, and this time there was genuine amusement in his expression. Your little girl has personality, Nathan. I like that. He addressed her directly. It's not a lie, dear. Your daddy was very clever, but not clever enough. He left traces, and we were patient. Where is he? The question exploded from her with a fury that surprised her. Michael. Oh, he's well taken care of. Warm place, regular food, even has television. Of course he can't leave and sometimes needs persuasion to collaborate with our businesses. Emily felt her legs failing. Her father was a prisoner, not in hiding. He hadn't abandoned them by choice. He was being held hostage for years. What do you want? Nathan kept his voice controlled, but Emily could feel the tension radiating from him. Initially, we just wanted the files, but now... Petrov looked at Emily in a way that made her shiver. Now we want the complete family. Michael has been very useful to us with his knowledge of port operations, but he's getting old, tired. His daughter, on the other hand, young, intelligent, and with the same natural talent for details he has. Not even in your dreams. Nathan's voice dropped an octave, gaining a tone that promised violence. It's not your decision, friend. Petrov made another gesture, and the men approached. Actually, you'll thank us. We're offering Miss Baker the chance to reunite with the father she loves so much. Family should be together, don't you think? It was at that moment that Emily noticed something that Petrov's men hadn't noticed. Nathan had subtly changed position, placing himself at an angle that would give him simultaneous access to two of the attackers, and there was something in his eyes, a deadly coldness, that she recognized from the first night at the restaurant, but intensified. Last chance, Petrov. Leave, now. Or what? You'll call the police? Petrov laughed. Half the police force at the port is on our payroll, the other half, well, they know it's better not to ask questions. Nathan smiled. It was a terrible smile, without humor, full of dark. Promises. I'm not going to call the police. What happened next was too fast for Emily to fully process. Nathan moved like a predator, grabbing a bottle from the nearest table and breaking it on the first man's face before anyone could react. The glass cut deep, blood spraying on the wall as the man screamed and brought his hands to his face. The second tried to draw his gun, but Nathan was already in motion, using the first's body as a shield while disarming the second with a precision that spoke of years of training. The gun flew far, sliding across the wet floor. Petrov shouted orders in Russian, and the other men moved, but the tight space of the restaurant played in Nathan's favor. He knew every inch of the place, every obstacle, every tactical advantage. Emily threw herself behind the bar when the shots began. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, wood and glass exploding around her. But between the shots, she heard other sounds, blows, screams of pain, the characteristic noise of bones breaking. When silence returned, she raised her head, trembling. 3 men were on the floor, 2 clearly dead, one moaning softly while holding what remained of his left arm. Petrov was leaning against the wall, a bloodstain growing on his shirt, but still conscious. Nathan was standing in the middle of the destruction, breathing heavily, blood, which she hoped wasn't his, spattered on his white shirt. In his eyes there was something primitive, something that reminded her that beneath all the sophistication and wealth he was fundamentally a survivor. "Emily," his voice came out hoarse, "are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to form words. Nathan approached Petrov, who watched him with a mixture of pain and reluctant respect. "Where is Michael Baker?" You'll have to kill me to find out." "I'm not going to kill you, Petrov. I'll do worse." Nathan knelt down, getting to the height of the wounded man's eyes. "I'll hand you over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. With all the files we found here, they'll have enough evidence to dismantle the entire operation. And you know what happens to Russian informants in American prisons?" Petrov's face visibly paled. "You wouldn't do that. We're from the same world, Nathan. Same rules." "I left that world the day she entered my life." Nathan looked at Emily, and there was something in his eyes that made her understand he was telling the truth. Now where is her father? It took another 10 minutes of persuasion, which Emily preferred not to watch closely, but Petrov finally yielded. Michael Baker was being kept in a safe house in Malibu, watched 24 hours a day, forced to use his knowledge to optimize the group's smuggling operations. He doesn't know that you exist," said Petrov, spitting blood. "We told him his wife and daughter died in a car accident shortly after he disappeared. It was easier to get his cooperation that way." Emily felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. Her father believed they were dead. He had lived all these years carrying that pain, that guilt, not knowing that she and her mother had survived, had struggled, had waited for him. Nathan called someone on the phone. Apparently he really did have backup men, just not as close as he had implied. In 15 minutes, the restaurant was full of people in dark suits who moved with military efficiency, removing bodies, cleaning evidence, making everything simply disappear. "Who are they?" asked Emily, watching the operation. "People who owe me favors. People who prefer that certain things not be investigated too closely." Nathan guided her out of the restaurant, passing the working men. "Don't worry about them. Worry about what we're going to do now. We're going to get my father." "We are." He stopped and faced her. "But first you need to understand something. After today, after what happened here, there's no going back. You will be forever linked to me, to my world, to my methods. Are you sure that's what you want?" Emily looked back at the restaurant where she had worked for years, where her simple and safe life had existed until a few weeks ago. Then she looked at Nathan, at the man who had risked his life to protect her, who had become her only anchor in a world that was crumbling. "I'm sure," she said, surprising herself with the firmness of her own voice. Nathan kissed her then. It wasn't the first kiss she had imagined for herself, soft, romantic on a beach at sunset. It was urgent, desperate, tasting of blood and danger and impossible promises. It was the kiss of two survivors sealing a pact that went far beyond love. When they separated, Emily knew that the woman who had entered that restaurant a few hours earlier no longer existed. In her place there was someone new, someone stronger, more dangerous, more capable of fighting for what she wanted. And what she wanted, with an intensity that scared her, was Nathan. It was her father back. It was justice. It was blood, if necessary. The war had truly begun. The house in Malibu was on a dead-end street, surrounded by high walls and security cameras. From the outside, it looked like just another vacation mansion of the Los Angeles upper class. Inside, according to the information Nathan had obtained, it was a luxury prison where Michael Baker had lived for more than 15 years. Emily observed the property from the back of the armored car, her nerves on edge. In the last 24 hours, Nathan had mobilized a small army, ex-military personnel, security specialists, people who didn't ask questions as long as the payment was adequate. She had never imagined that rescuing someone could be so complex, so military. 6 external guards, triple alarm system, communication cells blocked within a 2-kilometer radius, reported Marcus, the operation coordinator, a bald man in his 50s who talked about violence with the same tranquility that others discussed the weather. The good news is that they weren't expecting organized resistance. The security is more to keep someone inside than to prevent invasions. "And the bad news?" asked Nathan. "Your father-in-law isn't alone in there. 3 other guests, all, with valuable knowledge for the organization. If anything goes wrong, they'll eliminate everyone before running away." Emily felt her stomach contract. Her father had been held hostage for years, along with other people, forced to use his intelligence to enrich criminals who destroyed his family. "How much time do we have?" Her voice came out firmer than she expected. "The attack on the restaurant will be discovered in a few hours when Petrov doesn't make his routine check-in," explained Marcus. "After that, they'll enter emergency protocol, move the prisoners, burn evidence, disappear. So it's now or never." Nathan checked his gun for the 3rd time, automatic movements of someone accustomed to life-or-death situations. Emily observed him, noticing how he transformed when he entered operational mode. All the sophistication of the businessman disappeared, revealing the predator that had always existed underneath. It was scary and, in a disturbing way, extremely attractive. "You stay in the car," he said without looking at her. "No way." "Emily!" Nathan turned and she saw frustration and fear in his eyes. "This isn't a game. If something goes wrong, I want to be there. It's my father, Nathan. It's my family, my fight." "It's our fight now," he corrected, and something in the way he said "our" made her heart race. "But you don't have training for this." "Then give me a gun and teach me the basics." Marcus chuckled softly. "I like her, boss. She's got courage." Nathan fought with himself for a moment, then sighed. "Small pistol, double safety lock. If anyone who isn't me or Marcus approaches you, pull the trigger. Don't hesitate, don't think, just shoot." The gun was heavier than she imagined, cold in her hand. Nathan quickly taught her how to hold it, how to aim, how to reload. It was surreal to be learning to kill on a sunny afternoon in Malibu with the sound of ocean waves in the background. "Remember," he said, holding her face between his hands, "don't try to be a hero. Stay close to me. If I tell you to run, you run. Promise." "I promise." She leaned in and kissed him quickly, tasting fear and adrenaline on his lips. The operation began at 6 in the evening, when the sun was low enough to create useful shadows. Two of Marcus's men neutralized the external guards with silent efficiency, while a third disabled the alarm system. Emily followed Nathan through the meticulously maintained gardens, her heart beating so loudly she was sure it could be heard meters away. The house inside was elegant but cold, decorated like an expensive hotel where no one really lives. Discreet. Staircases led to the second-floor rooms where the prisoners were kept. Nathan went up first, gun in hand, each movement calculated and silent. The first room was empty, the second as well. In the third, they found a man in his 60s, thin grey beard, who cowered when the door opened. "Please don't hurt me," he whispered in English. "I'll do whatever you want." "We're not with them," Nathan said quietly. "We're here to get you. Out! Where are the others?" "End of the hall. Michael is in the last room. But be careful, there are guards downstairs." As if having heard the mention, footsteps echoed on the stairs. Nathan pushed Emily into the room, signaling for her to stay low. The sound of shots came from downstairs. Marcus and his team had encountered resistance. "Stay here," whispered Nathan. "Take care of him." He indicated the prisoner. "I'll be right back." "Nathan." She grabbed his arm. She wanted to say so many things, that she was afraid, that she didn't want to lose him, that in the last few weeks he had become more important to her than her own life. "I know," he said, as if he could read her thoughts. "Me too." He left, and Emily was left alone with the man, who observed her with growing curiosity. "Are you related to him?" he asked. "To Michael?" "I'm his daughter." The man's eyes filled with tears. "My God, he talks about you all the time, about how he misses his little daughter, about how he regrets not having been a better father. He doesn't know that you've grown up, that you've become this beautiful woman." Emily felt her throat tighten. Is he okay?" "Physically, yes, but inside he died the day they said you had died." The shots stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the noise. Emily positioned herself near the door, gun in hand, trying to control the tremor in her hands. Footsteps in the corridor, low voices. Nathan appeared at the door, a blood stain on his temple, but smiling. "It's clear. Let's go." The last room. In the corridor had a reinforced door, 3 different locks. Nathan worked quickly with tools that Marcus had provided, while Emily held her breath. When the door opened, she saw a man she immediately recognized, despite the years and changes. Michael Baker was sitting in an armchair near the window, reading a book. Completely white hair, face marked by time and sadness, but still with the same green eyes she remembered. He looked up when they entered, and Emily saw the exact moment when recognition arrived. The book slipped from his hands, falling to the floor with a dull thud. "Emily?" His voice came out broken, incredulous. "Hi, Dad?" Michael got up slowly, as if he were moving in a dream. He approached her carefully, as if she might disappear at any moment. "You've grown up," he whispered, touching her face with trembling fingers. "My little girl grew up and became a beautiful woman." "They lied to you," she said, trying to control the tears. "Mom and we were okay. We struggled, suffered, but we were okay. Connie," his eyes filled with hope and terror, "is she alive? Sick, but alive. And she'll get better now." Michael hugged her then, and Emily felt 16 years of pain, abandonment and longing dissolving in that contact. Her father hadn't abandoned them. Her family hadn't fallen apart. "Sabe choice. We need to go," Nathan said softly. "We have little time." Michael noticed him for the first time, and Emily saw immediate distrust in her father's eyes. "Who is he?" "This is Nathan. He saved me." "He saved me," corrected Nathan. "Your daughter is the bravest person I've ever met." The way he said this, with genuine reverence and pride, made something warm in Emily's chest. It was love. It was protection. It was partnership. They left the house under the darkening sky. 4 people who had been freed from different prisons, Michael from the physical one, Emily from loneliness, Nathan from emotional coldness, and all of them from the past that haunted them. But as the car drove away toward Los Angeles, Emily knew that the real journey was just beginning. They had found each other, but they still needed to discover how to build a family from the wreckage of so many lost years. Michael's reunion with Connie happened at the hospital on a rainy October afternoon. Emily watched from the door of the home as her father approached the bed where his wife lay, thinner and more fragile than when he left her, but still with the same brown eyes that had conquered him 30 years ago. "Michael." Connie's voice came out weak, confused. The medications kept her in a state between dream and wakefulness, but something in his presence brought her back to reality. "I'm here, love. I'm here." When he held her hand, Emily saw tears running down both their faces. 16 years of forced separation, of pain, of guilt dissolving in that simple touch. Her mother was improving rapidly. The treatment for heavy metal poisoning was working, gradually returning her movements and lucidity. "I thought you had died," whispered Michael, kissing her fingers. They showed me photographs of an accident." "Shh," Connie touched his face with her free hand. "We're here. Our girl grew up strong, Michael. So strong." Emily moved away discreetly, leaving her parents alone. In the corridor, she found Nathan talking on the phone with someone, his voice tense. When he saw her, he quickly ended the call. "Problems?" she asked. "Always." He pulled her to a more secluded corner. The operation in Malibu attracted attention. A lot of attention. Petrov's organization was just one piece of something much larger. Larger how? Saw international connections, high-ranking politicians, businessmen who move billions. "By freeing your father, we didn't just save a life. We broke an operation that took decades to build." Emily felt a chill down her spine. "They'll come after us." "They're already coming." Nathan touched her face, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "That's why I need you and your family to stay with me, at the mansion, where I can protect you." "For how long?" "For as long as necessary." There was something in his voice, a determination that went beyond logic. "Emily, I need you to understand something." "What?" "I'm not doing this just for protection, or out of obligation." He hesitated, as if the words were physically difficult to say. "I'm doing it because I can't imagine my life without you in it." Her heart raced. In the weeks of living together, the attraction between them had grown steadily, but always careful, always respectful. Nathan had never pressured, never demanded anything beyond her presence. But there were moments, looks that lasted too long, accidental touches that seemed electric, silences loaded with tension, when she knew that both wanted more. "Nathan." "You don't need to say anything now," he interrupted her. "Just think about what I said." That night at the mansion, the Baker family reunited for the first time in 16 years. Connie was in a temporary wheelchair, still recovering, but present and lucid. Michael couldn't stop looking at the two of them, as if he needed to constantly convince himself they were real. "Tell me about these years," he asked during dinner. "Everything. I don't want to miss anything else." Emily and Connie talked for hours, about the financial difficulties, about the jobs Emily had done since she was a teenager, about the nights when her mother cried when she thought her daughter wasn't listening, about delayed dreams, about strength found in impossible moments, about the love that kept them together, even in his absence. Michael listened in silence, occasionally wiping away tears he couldn't control. When they finished, he took a deep breath. "I have 16 years of absence to make up for," he said. "I know I can't recover the lost time, but I swear by everything I love that I will never leave you alone again." "We weren't alone," said Connie, looking in Nathan's direction. "He took care of our girl when you couldn't." Nathan, who had kept himself discreetly away during the family reunion, approached when mentioned. "Your daughter saved herself," he said. "I just offered resources." "Nonsense," retorted Emily. "You risked everything for us, your company, your security, your life." "And I would do it again," he said, looking directly into her eyes, without hesitation. Michael observed the interaction between them with growing attention. As a father, he recognized the signs. The way Nathan looked at Emily, how she unconsciously leaned toward him, the palpable chemistry that existed between the two. "May I talk to you?" Michael asked Nathan. "Alone?" The two men went out to the terrace, leaving Emily and Connie in the living room. Through the windows, Emily could see them talking intensely, but couldn't hear the words. "He loves you," Connie said suddenly. "Mom, a mother knows these things, and you? Do you love him too?" Emily closed her eyes. She had known the answer for weeks, but was afraid to admit it, even to herself. Nathan represented everything her mother had always taught her to avoid. Powerful, dangerous men with dark secrets, but he also represented security, protection, an emotional intensity she had never experienced. "Yes," she whispered. "I think so." "Then don't let fear decide for you, honey. I spent years afraid of everything after your father disappeared. Afraid to love, afraid to trust, afraid to live. And look where it got me. To a hospital bed, poisoned by people who wanted to use me as a tool against you." On the terrace, Michael and Nathan were finalizing their conversation. When they returned, Michael approached Emily. "He told me about the plans he has," he said, "to destroy the organization responsible for all this, to ensure that we can never be threatened again." "What kind of plans?" "Dangerous," Nathan answered, "but necessary. The evidence your father collected over the years, combined with the resources I have, can expose the entire network. Corrupt. Politicians, involved businessmen, money laundering routes, everything." "And then?" asked Connie. "Then we're free," said Michael. "All of us." "Not all," corrected Nathan. "I'll probably need to leave the country. When this information comes out, I'll have many enemies wanting my head." Emily's heart sank. "For how long?" "I don't know. Maybe forever. Then I'll go with you." The words came out before she could control herself. Nathan stared at her, surprised. "Emily." "I'll go with you," she repeated, this time more firmly. "Wherever it may be, for however long necessary. You don't know what you're saying. It would be a life of hiding, of constant vigilance. We could never return to the United States, and I would never have to live without you." The silence that followed was loaded with emotion. Michael and Connie exchanged glances, recognizing they were witnessing a moment that would change everything. "We need to talk," Nathan finally said. "Alone." They went out to the garden, where the full moon illuminated the white flowers that Nathan had ordered planted because he knew she liked them. They walked in silence until they reached the fountain, in the center of the garden. "I can't ask this of you," he said. "I can't ask you to abandon your family, your life, your country. You're not asking, I'm offering." "Why?" Emily faced him, and at that moment decided to be completely honest. "Because I love you. Because you've become more important to me than anything, including my own safety. Because the idea of living without you is scarier than any danger we might face together." Nathan kissed her then, but this time it wasn't urgency or desperation. It was reverence, promise, total surrender. When they separated, both were breathless. "If we stay together," he said, "there's no going back. You understand that? You'll be mine in every sense, and I'll be yours completely." "I understand." "Then come with me." He held her hands. "Now, tonight. Let me show you what it means to belong to me." The invitation hung between them like a portal to unknown territory. Emily knew that if she said yes, it wouldn't just be about sex or desire. It would be about choosing a life, a future, a love that defied all logic but felt more real than anything she had ever experienced. Nathan's room was on the top floor of the mansion, a spacious area dominated by windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. Emily had never entered it before. During all the weeks she lived in the house, that had always been private territory, sacred, untouched by her presence. Now, following him through the door, she felt her heart beating with an intensity that made her dizzy. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from anticipation. At 23, she was about to give her virginity to the man who had become the center of her universe. "Are you sure?" asked Nathan, stopping in the middle of the room, observing her with that intensity that always disarmed her. "Because once we cross this line, I want to cross it." Her voice came out firmer than she expected. "I want to belong to you, Nathan, in every possible way." He approached slowly, as if she were something precious that could break. When he came close enough for her to feel the heat of his body, he stopped again. "I've never done this before," she admitted, the words coming out in a whisper. "I know." He touched her face with a delicacy that contrasted with all the violence. She had seen him exercise. "And you know that it never meant anything to me before with anyone." It was true. In the weeks of living together, Emily had realized that Nathan treated sex as a transaction, relationships as a strategy. But with her, it was different. With her, each touch seemed wrenched from some deep place he kept locked. He kissed her. Then slowly, exploring every contour of her lips as if he wanted to memorize the sensation. His hands found the hem of her dress but hesitated. "Show me," she whispered against his lips. "Teach me how to belong to you." What followed was a careful dance between desire and tenderness. Nathan undressed her as if he were revealing a work of art. Each piece of clothing removed with reverence, each new inch of exposed skin kissed and adored. When she was completely naked before him, trembling not from cold but from vulnerability, she saw tears in his eyes. "You're perfect," he murmured, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Perfect." Emily helped him undress, her fingers exploring the scars that mapped the history of pain on his chest. Each mark was a survivor, proof that he had resisted when everything conspired to destroy him. She kissed each one, feeling him shudder under her lips. "No one has ever touched my scars like this," he said, his voice broken. "No one will ever touch you like I touch you," she replied, surprising herself with the possessiveness in her own voice. When they finally joined, it was with a painful slowness, each movement calculated not to hurt her. There was pain, yes, but it was quickly supplanted by a sensation of completeness that Emily had never imagined possible. It was as if two halves fit perfectly together, as if they had been created for each other. "Mine," whispered Nathan in her ear, moving with increasing care. "You are mine now." "Yours," she agreed, her nails marking his back. "Completely yours." Afterwards, lying between rumpled sheets, Emily traced lazy patterns on Nathan's chest while he played with her hair. The outside world had temporarily disappeared. There were no criminals, no dangers, just the two of them existing in a bubble of intimacy. "When do we leave?" she finally asked. "Tomorrow night." His answer was immediate, as if he already had everything planned. A private jet to Buenos Aires, then connection to Europe. I have a house in Tuscany, isolated, secure. And my parents? They'll stay here. With the protection I organized and with the evidence being disclosed, they'll be safe. We may not be able to communicate for a while, but they understand. Emily leaned on her elbow, looking at him. My mother told me not to let fear decide. For me and my father, he knows you love me. I do. The word came out without hesitation. More than I thought it was possible to love someone. I love you too. She leaned in and kissed him softly. And I'll go with you wherever necessary. Nathan's phone rang at that moment, breaking the magic of the night. He answered reluctantly, his expression hardening as he listened. I understand. Yes, execute Plan B. When he hung up, Emily was already sitting up, alert to the danger she recognized in his tone. What was it? They discovered where we are. We don't know how, but there's movement in the area. Unidentified cars reconnaissance. Nathan was already getting up, starting to get dressed. We need to leave. Now. My parents. They're already being transferred. To a safe location. Marcus coordinated everything. In 15 minutes they were dressed and ready. Nathan grabbed a bag that he apparently always kept packed for emergencies, while Emily gathered only the essentials. Her father's key she kept around her neck, Some things were too important to leave behind. In the living room, they found Michael and Connie being helped by Nathan's security guards. Her mother was in a wheelchair but alert. Her father carried a small backpack and a determined expression. "Where are we going?" asked Michael. "You're going to a safe house in Big Bear," explained Nathan. "Isolated, protected, with a medical team to continue Connie's treatment. We are going far away," completed Emily. "Very far away." The goodbyes were quick and painful. Connie held her daughter's face between her hands, whispering blessings and promises of reunion. Michael hugged Nathan for a long time, a masculine understanding passing between them. "Take care of my girl," said Michael. "With my life," promised Nathan. "And you," Michael turned to Emily, "take care of him too. Men like him, they forget how to trust anything other than strength and power. Teach him that sometimes vulnerability is the greatest strength of all." They left the mansion by different routes. Emily's parents in a convoy that headed inland, while she and Nathan took an armored car toward LAX, where a private jet was waiting. During the journey, Emily observed Los Angeles pass by the window, the city where she was born, grew up, dreamed, suffered, found love. She didn't know when she would see it again, if ever. "Having regrets?" asked Nathan, noticing her melancholy. "Never." She held his hand. "You are my home now. Where you are is where I belong." At the airport, as they climbed the stairs to the jet, Nathan received a message. He read it quickly and smiled, the first genuinely relaxed smile she had seen on him. The evidence was simultaneously released to 5 different media outlets and 3 international authorities, he said. "There's no way to cover it up anymore. The entire operation will crumble." "So we won?" "We won the first battle." Nathan pulled her close as the plane taxied. "Now we're going to live the life we chose." As they took off, Emily looked one last time at the lights of Los Angeles receding. She was leaving behind everything she knew, but she was taking with her something she never had before: true love, real passion, a future built on courageous choices. In the next few hours, they would be on another continent, starting a new life. Together. Forever. 6 months later, Emily woke up to the sound of birds singing and the smell of lavender coming through the window. The villa in Tuscany was everything Nathan had promised: isolated, secure, surrounded by vineyards that extended as far as the eye could see. It was a hidden paradise where they had built a bubble of normality away from the chaos they left behind. She reached out looking for Nathan, but found only cold sheets. Lately he woke before dawn, restless, checking security systems and encrypted messages arriving from sources in the United States. The fall of the criminal organization had been spectacular. Politicians resigning, businessmen being arrested, fortunes being confiscated. But there were also consequences. She found him in the improvised office, bent over his laptop, his forehead furrowed in concentration. In the last few months, she had learned to read his expressions, and that one wasn't good. "Bad news?" she asked, approaching from behind and massaging his tense shoulders. "Michael received a threat yesterday," he said without beating around the bush. Nathan never lied to her, even when the truth hurt. "Someone discovered where he's hiding." Emily's stomach plummeted. Her parents were supposedly safe in the house in Big Bear, protected by a security team that Nathan maintained, but apparently not safe enough. "What are we going to do?" "I am going back." He turned in his chair, taking her hands. "Temporarily. Just to organize a more secure transfer. We are going back." "No," the answer was immediate, definitive. "It's too dangerous. You stay here." "Nathan." "Emily, no." He stood up and she saw genuine fear in his eyes, not for himself but for her. "I can't risk losing you, I can't. And I can't stay here while my parents are in danger." They spent the entire morning arguing, each unyielding in their position. Nathan argued with cold logic. She was the main target, the person the criminals most wanted to capture. Emily argued with emotion. They were her parents, her responsibility, her family. The resolution came unexpectedly. At 2 in the afternoon, Nathan's phone rang. It was Marcus from security. "We need to talk," said the man's harsh voice. "It's about the threat to her parents. We discovered some things." 20 minutes later, they were in an encrypted video conference with Marcus and 2 other security specialists. What they discovered changed everything. The threat didn't come from the remnants of Petrov's organization, explained Marcus. It came from someone much closer, someone who always knew where Michael was, who had access to security information. Who? Nathan's voice came out dangerously low. Dr. Henry, Marshall, the neurologist who treated Connie. Emily felt as if she'd been punched. The doctor who had saved her mother, who had been so kind and competent, was involved with the criminals. He had been part of the operation from the beginning, continued Marcus, responsible for administering substances that kept the victims sick but not fatally, a specialist in chemical torture. Son of a bitch, murmured Nathan. He had access to Connie for months, knew exactly where she was, who visited, what information. She had. And now he's trying to finish what he started, added Marcus, but not alone. He allied himself with a group from Miami, people who lost a lot of money when the American operation collapsed. They want Michael alive to recover hidden assets, and they want Emily as a guarantee. The revelation left a heavy silence on the call. Emily felt anger growing inside her, not just at the danger, but at the betrayal. She had trusted that man with her mother's life. "What's the plan?" she finally asked. "Transfer your parents to an ultra-secure location and wait," said Marcus. "Marshall will try something soon. When he does, we'll be ready." "No." Emily stood up, a dangerous idea forming in her mind. "He wants to use me as a guarantee? Then let's give him that opportunity." "Emily, no." Nathan stood up too, guessing where she wanted to go. "I can be the bait, Nathan. Offer myself in exchange for my parents' safety. When he shows up to get me, absolutely not. It's the only way to end this definitively." She turned to the screen, addressing Marcus. "Is it possible to set up an operation like this?" Marcus looked from Emily to Nathan, clearly sensing the tension. "Technically, yes, but it would be extremely risky." "I'm not going to let you put yourself in danger like that," said Nathan, his voice loaded with emotion. "I've lost everything. Once in my life. I won't lose you too." Emily approached him, touching his face with both hands. "You won't lose me. But I also can't live the rest of my life in hiding while the people I love are in danger because of me. And if something goes wrong, then we face it together." She kissed him softly. "You taught me that sometimes vulnerability is strength. Let me use that." It took 3 days to convince him. 3 days of arguments, tears, moments of panic where Nathan almost cancelled everything. But in the end, he understood that Emily had grown, that she was no longer the frightened waitress he met at the restaurant. She was a woman who had chosen to fight for her family, for her love, for her freedom. The plan was elegantly simple. Emily would return to the United States, apparently alone, to visit her parents one last time before surrendering herself. Marshall would take the bait, try to capture her. At that moment, Nathan's team would intervene. On the eve of the trip, they made love with a desperate intensity, as if it were the last time. Emily memorized every touch, every whisper, every moment of connection. If something went wrong, she wanted to take these memories with her. "If I don't come back," she began, but Nathan covered her lips with a finger. "You will come back, because I won't let it happen any other way." He pulled her closer. "And when we return home, I want it to be as my wife." Emily felt her heart stop. "Nathan, I know it's crazy. I know we met in impossible circumstances, that our story began, with blackmail and violence. But I also know that I love you more than I've ever loved anything. I know that I want to spend the rest of my life protecting you, loving you, building something beautiful out of all this destruction." "Yes," she whispered, tears running down her face. "Yes, I accept." They married right there, that night, in an improvised ceremony in the garden of the villa. There was no priest, no witnesses except the stars. Just promises whispered under the Italian moon, rings made of gold threads that Nathan had kept for emergencies, and a love that had been born in the shadows, but grown in the light. The next day, Emily boarded for the United States. As Emily Blackwood, a married woman, a loved woman, a woman who had learned that sometimes the greatest act of courage is accepting that you deserve to fight for your happiness. The plane took off toward Los Angeles, carrying not just her, but all her hopes for a future where they could finally live in peace. Only one last battle remained, and this time she was ready to win. Memorial Hospital was exactly as Emily remembered. White corridors that smelled of disinfectant, the constant buzz of doctors and nurses, the atmosphere of lives being saved and lost every minute. But this time she wasn't there as the desperate daughter seeking treatment for her mother. She was there as bait. Dr. Marshall received her in his office with a smile that she now recognized as predatory. During all those months, he had been the wolf, disguised as the savior, poisoning her mother while pretending to cure her, collecting information about the family while playing the role of the dedicated doctor. "Emily, what a wonderful surprise," he said, rising from his desk. "I heard you were out of the country. How is Connie?" "Better, thanks to you," she lied, forcing a smile. In her ear, a microphone kept her connected with Nathan and Marcus, who coordinated the operation from a vehicle parked outside. "Actually, I came here because I need your help." Of course. Sit down. What can I do?" Emily took a deep breath, remembering the instructions. She had to make Marshall believe she was vulnerable, desperate, ready to surrender herself in exchange for her parents' safety. "The people who were after my father, they found me in Europe. They said if I didn't come back voluntarily, they would hurt my parents." She let her voice tremble, playing the role of the terrified daughter. "I don't know what to do anymore." Marshall's eyes shone with genuine interest. "I see, and what do you want me to do exactly?" Marshall leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming on the desk. "It's a delicate situation, really, but perhaps I can help. I have some contacts who deal with this kind of problem." It was the confession they needed. In her ear, Emily heard Nathan's voice. "Got it. Keep going a little longer." "Would you do that for us?" she asked, feigning relief. "Of course, but first, I need to know exactly where your parents are now, to ensure their safety during the negotiations." There it was, the true intention. Marshall wanted to locate Michael and Connie to deliver them to his new allies. "They're in a house in Big Bear," said Emily. "I can give you the exact address." "Perfect." Marshall stood up and went to a cabinet, rummaging through some papers. "I'll make some calls. Meanwhile, why don't you have some coffee? You're looking tense." He prepared 2 cups, but Emily noticed that he added something to only one of them, the one he offered to her. A sedative, probably. His plan was simple: drug her right there in the office, transport her unconscious. "Thank you," she said, accepting the cup but not drinking. Marshall returned to his desk and picked up the phone. "Hello? Yes, it's me. She's here. Yes, exactly as we planned. 20 minutes? Perfect." When he hung up, his behavior changed completely. The gentle smile disappeared, replaced by professional coldness. "You know, Emily, you should have stayed in Europe. You would have lived longer." "I know who you are," she said, finally abandoning the charade. "I know it was you who poisoned my mother, who passed information to the criminals, who pretended to help us while delivering us to our enemies." Marshall laughed. "A smart girl. Too bad her smarts came too late." He showed a syringe he had taken from the drawer. "This will make you docile until my associates arrive. After that, and well, that's no longer my problem." It was at that moment that the doors of the office opened violently. Nathan entered like a storm, followed by Marcus and 2 other men. The speed of the action was impressive. In seconds, Marshall was disarmed and immobilized. "Dr. Henry Marshall," said Marcus, showing an identification. "You're under arrest for involvement in a criminal organization, kidnapping, attempted murder, and a list of other crimes that will take the rest of your life to read." "So you can't prove anything," said Marshall, but his voice had lost all confidence. "Yes, we can." Nathan showed a small recorder. "Complete confession, admission of guilt, all recorded, plus the forensic evidence we found in your office, the same substances that were used to poison Connie." Marshall was taken away handcuffed, protesting uselessly. His associates, who were supposed to arrive in 20 minutes, encountered a very different reception than expected, a team of federal agents waiting for them. 3 hours later, Emily was in a safe house on the outskirts of Los Angeles, hugging her parents. Connie was visibly stronger, her movements almost completely recovered. Michael seemed to have rejuvenated years since reuniting with the family. "Is it over?" asked Connie, holding her daughter's face between her hands. "It's over," confirmed Nathan. "The network has been completely dismantled. Marshall will spend the rest of his life in prison, along with his partners. There's no one after you anymore. And can you come back home?" Emily and Nathan exchanged glances. In the last few months they had discovered that home wasn't a place, it was where they were together. But they also knew they wanted to build a life in the United States, near family and peace. "We can," said Nathan. "The authorities confirmed there are no more pending threats. We're free to live wherever we want." "Then come with us to Big Bear," suggested Michael. "The house is big, there's room for everyone. We can be a real family, for the first time." 6 months later, Emily was sitting on the terrace of the house in Big Bear, watching Nathan teach her father how to use the new security system he had installed. It was a domestic scene, normal, that she never imagined would be possible. Connie approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "How do you feel?" asked her mother, sitting beside her. "Complete," answered Emily, instinctively touching her still flat stomach where a new life was beginning to grow. She had discovered the pregnancy the week before, but hadn't yet told Nathan. "For the first time in my life, I feel complete. He'll be a wonderful father," said Connie, following her daughter's gaze. "Men like him, who have known so much violence, are the ones who value peace the most when they find it." That night, Emily finally told Nathan about the baby. They were in the room they shared, the moonlight coming through the open windows. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice loaded with emotion. "Absolutely. Are you happy?" Nathan kissed her with an intensity that answered the question. When they separated, there were tears in his eyes. "Happy is not enough," he whispered. "I'm complete. You gave me a family, Emily. You gave me a reason to be a better man. You were already a good man. You just needed someone who could see that." They made plans that night. For the baby, for the future, for the life they would build together. Nathan talked about teaching their child to swim in the nearby lake, about hikes in the mountains, about a childhood full of love and security, everything he never had. A year later, Emily held Lucas Blackwood in her arms, watching her husband play with their son. The boy had inherited his grandfather, Michael's green eyes, and Nathan's stubborn smile. Life had become exactly what she had never dared to dream. Her united family, true love, peace after so many storms. The High Tide restaurant had been rebuilt and transformed into a community center that offered support to vulnerable families. Nathan's way of giving back to the community that had given rise to their love story. Sometimes Emily still touched the key she carried around her neck, remembering the journey that brought her here. The safe in the restaurant was now empty, its secrets revealed, its mission accomplished. But she continued wearing the key, no longer as a symbol of mystery, but as a reminder that sometimes the most precious things in life come disguised as danger. Nathan approached, taking their son in his arms and kissing his wife. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how we got here, about how it all began." "You mean at the restaurant, when I blackmailed you into having dinner with me?" "It was horrible," she said, laughing. "You were a monster." "I was." He smiled without regret. "But it was what brought you into my life. And even knowing everything that happened, all the pain we caused each other, I would do it all again, 1,000 times." "Me too," she agreed, watching their son sleeping peacefully. "Because in the end, it was worth it. All the suffering, all the fear, all the uncertainty, it was worth it to get to this moment." The sun was setting over the mountains of Big Bear, tinting the sky gold and pink. It was a perfect late afternoon in a life that had finally found its place of peace. A life built on the ashes of the past, but illuminated by the promise of a future full of love. And so, between whispered declarations and fulfilled promises, they discovered that sometimes love is born exactly where no one would dare to look. In the shadows of desire, in the